Welcome to Military Images Live. I'm Ron Coddington, the editor and publisher of Military Images magazine. We've been around for 40 years. That's right, we're celebrating our 40th year. And during those 40 years, we have brought you some of the most unique and interesting Civil War photographs, portrait photographs, and other Civil War information to you. And we're super excited to be celebrating not only our 40th year in publication, this is also the second season of Military Images Live, and we are on episode 17. So some folks are going to be joining us right now. I see them coming on live. Doug York, Dale Neeson is here, Andrew Garton, Jeff Jambrone is here. Folks are coming online, and I'm delighted to have you here. And as you'll see, our item up for this evening is Cowan's auctions. When I think about friends of the magazine, advertisers who have been trusted and loyal, Wes Cowan and the fine folks over at Cowan's auctions have been just that. Since my earliest days with the magazine, starting 5 years ago, Wes came on board. They've been proudly represented on the back page of Military Images, the back cover, and I'm pleased to say that I've been absolutely proud as I could possibly be to carry forth the good word. Those of you who have dealt with Cowans in the past know that they are all about quality, and some of the finest images have passed through their hands. Their latest ad on the back cover of Military Images is this one, and you'll notice down here, American History. This is their November 15th, 2019 auction, American History, including treasures of the Civil War. So you might take an opportunity, the next opportunity, to go visit Cowan's auctions and find out for yourself. But don't go there just yet. Wait until about 9:30 or so when this program is over, and then you can go check it out. So check it out later on. So also joining us, Rick Wolf, Liz Topping, Fred Taylor. How are you guys doing tonight? Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I could not, I'm compelled to spend just a moment with Jason Lynn Pate and his students at Lake Hill Elementary in Union City, Tennessee. Those of you who have been following the great works that five of you watchers did in donating 10 issues to the students of Lake Elementary. You know the story. Those guys donated the money to get the issues, and we've now delivered 2 issues into the hands of the students. And Jason sent this photo today. You can see all the kids reading copies of the latest magazine. I think it's absolutely fantastic, not just because they're reading the Military Images magazine, but because they are really digging into history. So I'm super excited and look forward to more reports from Union City, Tennessee, and Jason. So thanks everybody there. I also want to mention a little farther west of Union City is the Kansas City show. That's coming up on October 3 to 6th, which if you know, that's just a few days away. Thursday is the opening events. This is the Civil War Photo Collectors Society, which is partnering with the Daguerrean Society. We've got a whole slew of events beginning Thursday night. There's an opening to the event at the Nelson Adkins or Rickley Gallery. Sorry, I'm messing that up. In Kansas City, we'll see lots of daguerreotypes. We'll meet folks from the DAG Society, Civil War photo collectors. It's a great mix and mingle. Followed on Friday by some road trips. I'm going to Steamboat Museum, going to Battlefield, Mine Creek Battlefield. So lots of good things there. I'll be posting more about that here. Followed by Saturday, which is the trade fair. We'll have Civil War dealers. We'll have Daguerrean Society dealers. So if you live in the Kansas City area, come out and check out all of the events. And I hope you can make it because we're super excited to be there. A good adventure for all of us. So moving on, I thought I would talk about this image, which turned out to be the most popular by far of all the postings on our Facebook page over the last couple weeks. And at first I thought maybe it has something to do with the image itself. I guess I should talk about that. We have Andy Millis with the 12th and the 74th Indiana Infantry. He's standing here with his frock coat on, his lieutenant's shoulder straps. He's leaning against a big version of the big flag, stars and stripes, and he's looking like he means business. So certainly the photograph was an attraction. I also think maybe the headline was an attraction. Andy's second chance. Sort of want to read what was going on there. And so the story is this, for those of you who missed the post, the story is this one. And I must say, it's to me, it's a powerful story. In 1861, he signs up for to be an officer, a junior officer in the 12th Indiana Infantry. And his reception as an officer does not go particularly well. A company historian writes, quote, "He had a style about him that repelled rather than won, and yielded a reluctant obedience to orders." So that's a sort of a gentle way of saying that the rank and file did not like him. So the year goes by, and as the year goes by, he's basically demoted from a lieutenant to a fourth sergeant. And he ends his 1 year enlistment pretty much in disgrace. Some guys would have pretty much called it quits, but not Andy. He comes back, he raises a company that joins the 74th Indiana. This is a newly formed regiment that's organized in 1862 after Abraham Lincoln makes his call for more troops. This time, it's a very different story. He learned lessons from his brief tenure as an officer in the 12th. He makes a really great impression on the soldiers. And this time, the company historian says, with the experience he had gained in the 12th, he became a very efficient officer and was quite popular with his men. So he basically carries all of that into the Battle of Chickamauga on September 19th, 1863, where there is some intense fighting. He and his men, they're firing all their rounds. They fire off 60 rounds. They're making progress. And then the Confederates counterattack and push them way back. And they've got a comment in the report, the regimental report, from their colonel, who says, "Being overpowered after a desperate struggle for the mastery of the ground, I ordered the regiment to fall back and took position on a ridge about 300 yards in the rear of where our advance was checked. Here, the regiment suffers very heavy losses, and among them are Millis. He takes a shot through the shoulder, and the musket ball mushrooms that soft lead and goes through his back. The surgeons look at him and say, 'Hopeless case, we're going to send him home to die,' which they do. They send him home, only he makes a recovery. He's one of those guys who defies the odds. He makes a recovery, and he goes on to lead a long and productive life. He dies on September 21st, 1919. It's 2 days after the 56th anniversary of the battle. And there's something powerful, I think, in that story about the spirit of a soldier, and maybe the human spirit as well. He refused to take no for an answer, and he came back, he did his best, and he served with dignity and with distinction. And the message I leave you here with this is something I believe in. There is much that these men can teach us. So cheers to Andy Millis and all those boys in the 12th Indiana and the 74th Indiana Infantries. Now, I want to get to a couple of unsung heroes who are actually with us today. First one, I want to talk about is Brendon Mackey. Brendon contacted me, I guess it was maybe about a year ago, and he had some interesting images that he wanted to share. And when I first saw this image, I didn't know quite what to make of it. Those of you that have received your latest copy of Military Images can read the full story. But what we have here is a Navy officer, and he's doesn't look anything. He's not wearing the uniform of a Navy officer. What we see here is a robe, a long robe. You can see bare ankles. He's got a pair of sandals on and a turban. And most interestingly, he's holding some prayer beads, and he's holding them in a unique way. He's got his fingers around them, holding them in a very, it feels like a very purposeful manner. Beyond that, you've got, he's sitting on some sort of a stool, and you've got a rather plain backdrop. On top of that, you have some Arabic writing, and I'll hold this up so you can see it. We're looking at this carte de visite. There's some Arabic writing at the bottom. And I endeavored to get to the bottom of this. And there's a research story here that I want to share with you. And the research story is that I wanted to find out why was he exactly in this costume, and where was this costume? What does this represent? So fortunately, we know his name. It's AlbertLeary Gahan. And that name may ring a bell with some of you. He's the brother of Philadelphia photographer John Lawrence Gahan. And John Lawrence Gahan was very prominent. Many of you know him as the man who took the photographs of Confederate prisoners at Fort Delaware. That's John Gahan. This is John's brother, John's older brother, Albert. Albert goes into the Navy. John doesn't. He tries to get in the Navy, but he winds up being a photographer. Albert goes into the Navy, and during the time of the Civil War, he is stationed on a ship, the St. Louis. And that ship is assigned to duty in this area here, which is a triangle that involves on one side Gibraltar, Canary Islands, and the Azores. So AlbertLeary Gahan and his comrades on the St. Louis are in the triangle, the other triangle, not the Bermuda Triangle. It's sort of a African coast triangle. So I digress slightly. To get back to the story, here is Albert in this unusual costume, and trying to get to the bottom of it. So I reached out to 5 different academics, professors of history, of culture in the United States. I then reached out to some museums as well around the country and also in Europe and Africa to try to get some sense of what this man was wearing. The professors were ultimately not able to help, and the museums were not exactly helpful as well, although I give them all credit for trying. So I was in some bit of desperation, because I knew that for me to be able to tell the story, we needed to understand what exactly he was wearing. This takes me to our other unsung hero, and this is Abdullah. And I found Abdullah on Facebook, where he runs a culture site on Moroccan culture. And so I contacted him, I messaged him on Facebook, and I introduced myself, and I told him what I was up to. I told him I had this photograph of this man in costume and needed some help identifying him. And what I didn't tell Abdullah was I didn't tell him anything about Gahan. I didn't mention his name. I didn't mention the St. Louis. I didn't mention the triangle. I said none of that because I didn't want to influence his judgment. I simply wanted to find out if he recognized this costume or if he could point me to someone who did. So I send the photo, and I'm expecting maybe some time to go by as he's considering. but he didn't. He immediately replied in a message, and he said, yes. He said, I see that costume. I know that costume. It's still worn today. And I was shocked. And I said, well, tell me more. And then he said, because this is important, he's going to tell me who they are, and he's going to tell me where they're located. So this is a magic moment. And he says, this is from the Jabala people, and they lived in northwest Morocco in the mountains. Well, guess what? If we go back to our map and we go to the triangle, the Jabala people live right in this area, all along the side of this part of the triangle. So I can't tell you how super excited I was to get to the bottom of this. I had confirmation to be able to talk about where Gahan actually was. And if you start to get into it, you begin to find out that he's actually holding a set of prayer beads. And those prayer beads, actually 99 beads of a medium size. And then each of the 33 bead intervals, there's another bead. And the idea here is you recite an Islamic prayer 33 times. And as you're doing it, you keep holding the next bead so you can keep your place in knowing the number of prayers that you said. When you get to a large bead, you know it's time to change to the next prayer. So I learned a lot from my good friend Abdullah. And so I'm indebted to Abdullah and to Brendon for making a really interesting story come to light about AlbertLeary Gahan of the Gahan family. So thanks to you both for that. I have another unsung hero that's connected to a research story. This has been, I have to tell you, a couple of weeks of some intense research, although the Gahan story dates back over a month now. I was reminded of it when we got to this next story. Let me share with you his name. And this is Russ Bailey. There you go. Our other unsung hero, Russ Bailey. And he's tied to another unsung hero that I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. But here's the photograph that we're looking at here. All right. The other unsung hero is Daniel Taylor. He contributed this image, which is going to be part of our upcoming Tennessee gallery that will be in the winter issue of Military Images. And this uniform is stunning. He's got the pleated front, the 3 rows of buttons. It appears to be maybe a militia buckle down here. Well, occasionally there are glitches in life, and that includes technology. I'm at a loss to explain what happened. We had some kind of a power failure, and that shut down everything. So we're back now, and I hope that you are still here. I would certainly want to pick up where we left off on this episode 17 of Military Images Live. I'm going to wait just a second for folks to come back if you're still here. This is Ron Coddington, the editor and publisher of Military Images. We have had some sort of a power outage that shut us down, but we are back in action now, and I hope you are able to join us. And I will continue. I'd like to see if we have a couple folks that will come back online and let us know what's going on. We are live, and I'm hoping for some sign of life. If you are out there, do let me know that that you can hear us and give us an emoji or give us some sort of, there we go. All right. Thank you for coming back. We had an unusual outage here. So we're back now. Thank you, Bobby. I'm glad to be back. Glad the energy is still on here. We have had some crazy weather today. I do want to get back into our story. I was talking about Russ Bailey, who is one of our unsung heroes, and looking at this really fantastic image that we have here. This is from the Daniel Taylor collection, and you've got a lot of amazing things going on You got the three pleats, you've got the four pleats, the three rows of buttons, the militia sword. You have some tassels up here on his shoulder. You have a secession badge on his other shoulder. This guy has it all. He also has, for his very highly ornamented uniform, he's also wearing this hat, which with one side curved up. Great looking hat. It seems actually a little plain compared to the rest of the uniform. So great image. What we also have is this letter that comes from the family, which talks about the image being with the family. This is the family of John L Turnage, John Luttrell Turnage. And John Turnage was in the war from the start to the finish. He served in the 51st Tennessee Infantry and was captured twice during the war. So we've got quite a history. And as I began to take a look at his service record, I realized that we have a lot of information from his service record about the 51st Tennessee. We also have his Tennessee pension application, which gives even more detail about his war experience. So it's really quite a rich record. Now, something though made me stop and pause because as I looked at the uniform, I thought, if this soldier was in the 51st Tennessee, why is he wearing what appears to be a cavalryman or some mounted soldier uniform? So I began to take a look at the 51st to try to find out about some of the companies, and I was scratching my head. Another detail is kind of interesting here, and that is on his hat are two letters, H and C. Very clear, very easy to see, H and C. So I began to think that the company that Turnage was in, when it was first organized, it might have been something called H and C. And so, but I was still concerned because we're not really getting information. Why was he in a cavalry outfit? How does that connect up? So I started to look again at his service record, and I found out that he was from Tipton County, not only Tipton County in Tennessee, but the southern part of Tipton County. So I called up Tipton County and I talked to called up the museum actually, and spoke with a very nice woman there and said, hey, listen, I need to find out a little bit more about an image, and I'm curious to know specifically about the militia units that formed in Tipton County, and if one of them had the initials H and C. So the woman eventually led me to Russ Bailey, who is a head of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. He's also a town historian, super knowledgeable guy. So we had a nice telephone conversation, and it ended with me emailing him this image. And he replies to me and says, he says, I know that uniform. He said, it's Hill's Cavalry. That's the HC. So the uniform, the content of this photograph, the uniform makes a direct connection to Hill's Cavalry. Not only that, Russ Bailey sends me the captain of Hill's Cavalry. This is Charles Hill. So no question here, we're looking at a very similar uniform that Hill's wearing. The hat is different, but the uniform is practically the same. Now, he also sends me this photograph, which is the adjutant of Hill's Cavalry. And so if the image of Hill was not enough to convince you, look at the image of Somerville. We have the same uniform, and it appears to be the same sword. So those of you who want to talk about props, could be a prop sword we're looking at here. This gentleman is the adjutant, Somerville, and he lived in Mason Depot in the southern part of Tipton County. Now, where this gets really interesting is because we have no record of Turnage as being a member of Hill's Cavalry, it begs the question, who else could it be? Well, there actually is one other person. The person who sent the letter, this letter that I showed earlier, this sort of an affidavit, her last name, or one of her names, is OKelly. And it turns out that the Turnages and the OKellys are related. The OKelly family lives in southern Tipton County, right down the road from this man, Somerville. And the OKellys had one son of military age, and his name is Leslie Jay OKelly. He's directly related to the OKelly family and directly related to the person who wrote the affidavit about John L Turnage. So I then got from Russ Bailey this image, which is a picture of John L Turnage later in life. And so there are some similarities in these faces, but there's also a lot of differences. So I went to Civil War Photo Sleuth and put these images online, and there was not a match. They did not match. So what I believe we have here, and this makes sense because John L Turnage has no cavalry connection, but OKelly does. So, and there's only one son in the OKelly family. And so I think we can safely say, we can conclude here that this man is actually Leslie Jay OKelly. And Leslie Jay OKelly has his own interesting story to tell. He was also in the war from the beginning to the end. And I will tell you that in one of the quotes I found about him, comes from a regimental history during a skirmish at Lock Ridge's Mill against Union pickets. And according to that regimental history, it says, quote, OKelly, our man here, OKelly rushed to the front and having discharged his gun and pistol, drew saber and, overtaking one of the enemy's troopers, engaged him in personal combat. The fight was short. Private OKelly receiving a cut on the head when the Federal trooper fled. His hurts were not ascertained. Private OKelly, however, remained in the combat and soon afterward captured the enemy's quartermaster and brought him to headquarters. So you can read more about OKelly and more than 30 other identified Confederate Tennesseans that will be in our winter issue. So Unsung Heroes, Unsung Hero is a tip of the cap to Russ Bailey for helping us solve that mystery. Now, when we're talking about our Tennessee issue that's coming up, that reminds me of our final segment for the evening. That's our state champs. Daniel Taylor, who owns the image of OKelly. Daniel was a big contributor early on and got me inspired about doing an issue on Tennessee Confederates. Also a shout out to Mike Hunt. Mike was also an early and ardent supporter of doing such an issue. Now, we've done Tennessee Confederates in past issues, but it's been a while, so we're going to revisit them coming up soon. One more state hero that I want to tell you about is John Pillars. John just contacted me last week and said, hey, it's been a while since you've done anything, any kind of state issue on Illinois. And he's right. You have to go all the way back to our days in Sepia, November, December 1990. That's in the days of our founding editor, Harry Roach. Had an issue dedicated. I didn't even count the number of Illinois images, but there were a bunch of them in there. That's 1990. Let's do the math. We're looking at 29 years since then. So thanks to John, I hope that we're going to be able to get an issue going. And let me just say a quick word about it's guys like Mike Hunt and Daniel Taylor and John Pillars who are these champions. They're the guys who are helping to, they're telling me that, hey, we should do something. And not only that, they're helping to find images, to provide information. Daniel Taylor has been fantastic. And I expect that John is going to be a great comrade to work with as we bring Illinois soldiers back to the pages of military images at some future point. So my word to you, and I'll leave it with you here tonight, is if you do have a state interest and you're willing to put the time and the effort into bringing some of these images to light, to telling their stories, drop me a line, militaryimages@gmail.com. So that's all I've got tonight. Turned out to be a two-part episode. Sorry about the technology issues there, but we will resume in a couple weeks. Again, a reminder, I hope to be able to meet you in Kansas City this weekend. And if I don't see you in Kansas City, I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Military Images Live. Thanks, and have a great night. Bye.